All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Geoff Rabideau of Rabideau Law, and today's presentation is on HST rebates and the 1.5 million insured mortgage cliff. What we'll be covering today first is the first-time homebuyers HST rebate. Then we'll be talking about the enhanced new housing HST rebate. And then going to compare the enhanced HST rebate with a first-time homebuyer rebate. And then after that, we're going to talk about how these rebates affect mortgage qualifications. Starting off here with the Ontario First-Time Homebuyers HST rebate. In order to qualify for such rebate, you have to, at least one of the purchasers has to be a first-time homebuyer. That purchaser, or who we'll call the qualifying purchaser, must be at least 18 years of age. They must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. The property they're purchasing must be for their principal residence or principal place of residence. And in the year that they are purchasing the property, and for the previous 4 years, they cannot have owned or cannot have lived in a property that their spouse or common law partner owned. Also, in order to qualify, neither themselves or their spouse or common law partner can have ever claimed in the first-time homebuyers rebate. Plus, they have to be the first person to move into the property. That's important because sometimes with pre-constructions, condos especially, the occupancy date occurs before the closing date. And sometimes the purchaser will think, well, I'm not ready to move in yet, so maybe I will rent it out. No, no, no. You can't do that. You can't rent it out. The purchaser has to be the first person to occupy that property. Otherwise, they would lose all HST rebates. There are timelines that are specific in order to qualify for this HST rebate. And the agreement of purchase and sale has to be no earlier than March 20th, 2025, and it can be signed and dated no later than March 31st, 2031. So that agreement of purchase sale has to be between those two dates. And the construction of the property has to be completed no later than December 31st, 2035. The HST rebate actually breaks down in the following table. We see that for a purchase price of $500,000, there's the existing Ontario HST rebate of $24,000. So the new rebate is actually a top-up to the existing. So the new top-up on $500,000 would be $16,000, right? Bringing that total to 8%. So 8% of $500,000 is $40,000. So the HST rebate would be $40,000 on $500,000. We then see at $1 million, the HST rebate would be $80,000. And that is where the rebate caps out. Okay? So at $1 million, it caps out. And then above $1 million, it gradually decreases to where it doesn't exist anymore at 1.5 million. Now, the current existing $24,000 HST rebate would still be available, but the top-up would not be available. So let's talk about the other HST rebate, the Ontario Enhanced New Housing HST rebate. Now, please understand, these are two separate rebates, okay? And so in order to qualify for this rebate, it's very similar to the previous rebate. You have to be a purchaser of the property. The home has to be brand new build or substantially renovated. You have to be able to qualify under the other HST, the existing HST rebate requirements. The home has to be your principal place of business. The purchaser or a close blood relative have to move in the property and occupy it first before anybody else. And the agreement of purchase and sale has to be entered into a very specific timeline. We're going to talk about that in a moment, as well as the purchase price cannot exceed 1.85 million. So as you see, these are almost the exact same qualifications as the first-time home buyer rebate. There are just a few differences. One, You don't have to be a first-time home buyer in order to receive the enhanced rebate. 2, the purchase price is higher, right? With the first-time home buyer rebate, it extinguished at 1.5 million, where here it's 1.85 million. So it's a higher purchase price availability here. The big difference is also the timeline. So what we see here is that the earliest qualifying agreement of purchase and sale would be April 1st, 2026. And the last qualifying agreement of purchase and sale would be signed and dated March 31st, 2027. So that's only 1 year. It's only a 1-year period in which a purchaser can qualify for the enhanced new housing HST rebate. Plus, the property construction on that property has to commence no later than December 31st, 2028, and substantial completion of that property must be achieved by December 31st, 2031. Comparing now to the actual amount of the HST rebate, as per the table here, we see $500,000. We see the Ontario rebate of 8%, and that's the 8%, and that's the enhanced rebate. But what also is happening is Ontario is covering the federal portion, which is the 5%. So the 8% and 5% are both covered by Ontario. So we get the total HST relief rebate on $500,000 is $65,000. If you think about it, $500,000 times 13% is $65,000. So we see then that the rebate completely covers the amount of HST on the property at $500,000. If we go to 1 million, we see then at $1 million, the HST on that property would be 13%, $130,000, and the rebate is $130,000. So once again, at $1 million, the rebate completely covers the amount of HST. But that is where the rebate caps out at 1 million or $130,000. So therefore, as the purchase price increases, the HST rebate does not increase with it, and therefore the purchaser will have to encounter the HST that's over and above the rebate. So what we see here then is at 1.5, we see the HST rebate is still $130,000, but then after that, it starts decreasing, getting up to 1.85, where there's no HST rebate except the original $24,000 rebate. Now, comparing the two rebates, the timelines, we see then that the first-time home buyer rebate, the qualifying period is from March 20th, 2025 to December 31st, 2030. And we see that the enhanced new housing HST rebate has a much shorter qualifying period, April 1st, 2026 to March 31st, 2027. So you see that these two overlap. So let's say if someone was purchasing property and had a first-time, let's say it was a first-time home buyer, and they had purchased their property during the enhanced new housing rebate period, they could actually choose the enhanced new housing rebate rather than the first-time home buyer rebate. So the idea is the purchaser wants to look at the duration of time and whether or not they're a first-time home buyer and decide which one is better for them. Now let's compare how the rebates act in comparison to each other dollar per dollar. So we see that the rebates are very much comparable up to $1 million. But then after that, that's when the enhanced rebate continues on because it's capped at $130,000 up until $1.5 million. But whereas with the first-time homebuyer rebate, it decreases down. And at $1.5 million, it's only the $24,000. So that is a $106,000 difference at $1.5 million. And then after $1.5 million, that's when we see the enhanced rebate decreasing down to $24,000 at $1.85 million. So for you mortgage brokers, you do understand that the first-time home buyer rebate status does not equal mortgage qualification. You know that the first-time home buyer HST rebate is a tax test. It is not about mortgage qualification. And therefore, mortgage qualification is based on a financing test. What this means then is that a repeat buyer who does not qualify for the first-time home buyer rebate could still qualify for the 30-year insured mortgage when purchasing a newly constructed home. Now, how these HST rebates affect the mortgage application. And the difference comes down to if the rebate has been assigned or credited to the builder on closing. So typically what happens prior to these rebates is the builder would provide the HST application documents to the purchasing lawyer. The purchasing lawyer would have their client sign them during the signing process, and they would send those documents off to the builder's lawyer. The builder then would assign that credit on closing, which means then that the purchaser didn't have to pay the full HST amount, which is that $24,000. The builder would credit $24,000. So let's say if it was $1 million purchase, well, the $1 million purchase was actually $1,024,000, right? Because the HST rebate was already built in it because it has been assigned over the builder. Now, with the new rebates, it comes to whether or not the builder is agreeable to have the rebate assigned or credited to the builder. And some builders have indicated that they're not going to because they don't want to get involved in determining which rebate is applicable, either the enhanced rebate or the first-time homebuyer rebate. So it comes down to when applying for a mortgage, if the rebate is assigned, then on your mortgage application, you will submit the net price after the rebate has been applied. And that's subject to the insurer policy. This results in a lower purchase price used for underwriting. It also may reduce the mortgage amount and the loan-to-value ratio. And it may preserve the insured mortgage eligibility below 1.5 million. However, if the builder does not assign or credit the HST, then what happens then is the rebate is not assigned. And what that means then is the lender may submit, so the lender will require you to submit the total purchase price. That would be the purchase price including HST with no rebate built in. Right? So you're not deducting the rebate. This will result in a higher amount may need to be financed or paid on closing. This will result in a higher loan to value and obviously a stress test payment. And it may move the application above the 1.5 insurance limit, 1.5 million insurance limit. Now let's talk about that 1.5 million insured mortgage cliff. As you all know, you can get mortgages insured up to 1.5 million. Okay? And then over and above, you can't get them insured. So I have two examples here, example A and example B. Now this is based on the enhanced HST rebate. So we see here at 1.5 million, sorry, at example A, we see the price before HST, 1.4 million. We see the HST is 182,000, which gives a gross purchase price of 1,582,000 minus the rebate. Remember, it's capped at 130,000. So you get the net underwriting price of 1,452,000. That mortgage, therefore, could be mortgage insurance applicable, right? And then based on that, we see that the down payment that the purchaser has to bring in, which is 5% of the first 500,000 and then 10% of the amount over and above, that down payment works out to 120,200. Whereas example B, we see the purchase price is 1.45 million plus the HST is 188,500, bringing the total purchase price to 1,638,500. Deducting the rebate, the $130,000, if we apply that rebate, it brings the purchase price down to 1,508,500. That mortgage is not insurance applicable, okay? Therefore, the minimum down payment there, because the insurance is not applicable to that one, is 20% of the purchase price. And therefore, the purchaser would have to bring in $301,700 at a minimum. So for $50,000 higher of a purchase price, we then see that it results in $181,500 more that the purchaser has to pay towards the property. So if there's anything that you're going to take away from this slide, if in the event the purchaser is going with the enhanced HST rebate, then the important thing to take away from this slide is that the pre-HST purchase price cannot be more than $1,442,478 in order to qualify for mortgage insurance. Okay? Or in order to have the mortgage insured. Now let's look at it from the first-time homebuyer rebate perspective. Here, we see example A and example B. We see here that the price before HST on example A is $1,350,000. We see the HST is $175,000, bringing the total purchase price to $1,525,000. Subtracting the HST rebates, we see then that the net and underwriting price is $1,469,700. That mortgage could be insured. The minimum down payment in that instance would be $121,970, right? Once again, that 5% of the first $500 and then 10% of anything over and above $500,000. Versus example B, we see the purchase price here is $1.4 million. We add on the HST and apply the HST rebate, and we get the net underwriting price of $1,536,800. That mortgage could not be mortgage insured. It could not get mortgage insurance. So therefore, the minimum down payment on that property for the purchaser would be $307,360. Once again, a $50,000 difference in the purchase price results in the purchaser having to bring in $185,390 more in order to close the transaction. So if the purchaser is going to be going through the first-time homebuyer rebate, then the pertinent number to remember is that the net purchase price can't be more than $1,372,578. So the final takeaways from this presentation. One, you're starting off with the right rebate route, right? Understand whether or not the purchaser has the ability to go through the first-time homebuyer rebate, HST rebate, or the enhanced rebate, all right? That's going to be based on, obviously, whether or not they're first-time homebuyers. It's going to be based on timing and eligibility. Timing, as you know, is very important because the enhanced rebate is only for 1 year's duration, right? April 1st, 2026 to March 31st, 2027. So if they can't qualify for that time period, then you have to look and see, are they a first-time home buyer and can qualify for the first-time home buyer HST rebate. You also have to then determine whether or not the rebate is actually going to be assigned to the builder. And this would be in the agreement of purchase and sale. Now, Rabideau Law, we do a great job of reviewing agreement of purchase sales for our clients and our referral partners. So, and we don't charge for it. It's part of our job. It's what we do for you guys, okay? So always feel free to send your agreement of purchase sales in, have them sent in. We'll review them and just verify, make sure everything's good for you guys, our referral partners, and for our clients. And then don't forget the 1.5 million insured mortgage cliff. Okay, so once again, under the enhanced route, the maximum net purchase price is $1,442,478. And under the first-time homebuyer route, the maximum net purchase price is $1,372,578. Okay, obviously, verify everything before submission, so this way you don't run into any problems, but that's what we're here for. We're here to help you guys, okay? So once again, I'm Geoff Rabideau, Rabideau Law. If you have any questions, I'm going to stay on for a bit, so feel free to put them in the chat feature, and I'll stay on and answer your questions through the chat feature. But if you want to know more about Rabideau Law and you want to follow us, here's our information. You've got our telephone number, our toll-free number, email, our website. And if you like this presentation and you want more content like this, then I suggest you follow Rabideau Law on social media. I'm always creating content. I'm always writing blogs. I'm always doing presentations. And so I'm putting a lot of content, great content, on our social media platform. So that's where you can find us. And once again, your success is our mission. and we're always here for your next big win. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate you allowing me to join you today. Okay, lots of questions. I'll see you guys in the chat. Thanks.